But we also have issues around things like hate speech. And one of the differences between hate speech and elections is that the people who go out, who say hateful things aren't necessarily getting smarter at saying hateful things. So as the AI systems get better, we generally are just catching more and more of the hate speech, and we're able to take it down. And it's not like hate speech is getting more sophisticated. So there, I think that as the systems get better, we will get closer and closer to having a lower prevalence of that on the systems.
What kind of regulation do you think is good for our societies, but also acceptable to the company? What kind of regulation would you suggest should be embraced by the EU? What should be rejected? Give us your sense.
So I think that there needs to be regulation in at least 4 areas touching our company. And they are elections and political discourse around content more broadly, content moderation, privacy, and data portability. And the reason why I really believe that this needs to happen is because there are a lot of decisions in these areas that are really just balances between different social values. Right? What should be the balance between free expression and safety? Right? What is political discourse, and what's the boundary between that and political interference? To what extent do we want companies to be locking down data, and to what extent do we want them to be encouraging them to make it more open, to encourage more innovation and competition and academic research? So I believe what our responsibility is to build the operational muscle to be able to proactively enforce whatever the policies and regulations are to make sure that we can fight election interference, take down content that's going to be dangerous. I do think that we don't want private companies making so many decisions about how to balance social equities without a more democratic process. So I think that where the lines, in my opinion, should be drawn is there should be more guidance and regulation from the states on basically on what kind of, take political advertising as an example, what discourse should be allowed, or on the balance of free expression and some things that people call harmful expression. Where do you draw the line? What kinds of systems should companies have to develop? In the absence of that kind of regulation, we will continue doing our best. We're going to build up the muscle to do it, to basically find stuff as proactively as possible. We will try to draw the lines in the right places. But I actually think on a lot of these questions that are trying to balance different social equities, it's not just about coming up with the right answer. It's about coming up with an answer that society feels is legitimate and that they can get behind and understand that, here, you drew the line here on the balance between free expression and safety, and not just, okay, is that the right answer? It's not that there's one right answer. People need to feel like, okay, enough people weighed in, and that's why the answer should be this, and we can get behind that. And I just don't think a private company will ever have the weight to create that kind of legitimacy. So that's why I'm arguing for this. I think fundamentally it's very important to build the kind of trust that will be necessary in the internet and in our industry. And even if I'm not going to agree with every regulation in the near term, I do think it's going to be the thing that helps create trust and better governance of the internet and will benefit everyone, including us, over the long term. I do think that there should be regulation on harmful content. I think that there's a question about which framework you use for this. And right now there are 2 frameworks that I think people have for existing industries. There's like newspapers and existing media, which is the analogy that you drew. And then there's the kind of telco type model, which is, okay, the data just flows through you, but you're not going to hold a telco responsible if someone says something harmful on a phone line. But I actually think where we should be is somewhere in between. I think the newspaper analogy is clearly wrong because there are more than 100 billion pieces of content that people share on our services every day. So the idea that we should have some kind of human editor that goes and checks each one to make sure that it is okay is just not analogous to what happens in a newspaper or other media company. But now, to say that we should not have any harmful content on the service, you wouldn't be able to do that and give everyone a voice around the world, which I think would just be losing a huge value. So I think that a third regulatory system needs to be made, which is not the no anything liability for telcos, but is also not the saying that, assuming that there's some number of people who can oversee this in our headquarters, because like an editor at a newspaper, I just think that's not reasonable.
Let's make this very abundantly clear, just like I did the day when I started streaming on Twitch in 2013. This stream is the United States of Phil. This is my stream, not yours, not the viewers, it's mine. And therefore, anything that happens on it, within reason, is gonna be held against me, not against you, against me. So if I see nasty stuff and stupid stuff that has nothing to do with anything going on in the chat, I am going to lay down the law. It's that simple.